Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 64 based on novel. So let's start. The female disciple's eyes suddenly lit up and she shouted, "Senior apprentice brother is back." As for the second disciple, his face suddenly became gloomy, but that was replaced by a happy expression in a flash. Wang Lin could tell from the memories of the core formation cultivator that he really liked the eldest disciple. This eldest disciple had some blood relations with the core formation cultivator. The eldest disciple could just barely be considered a genius. It took him 100 years to reach the peak of the foundation establishment stage and was only one step away from the core formation stage. But according to the core formation cultivator's memories, the reason he liked this eldest disciple was because of the disciple's looks. He planned to marry his eldest disciple off to the female disciple of another late-stage core formation cultivator to form an alliance. After only a quick glimpse of this memory, Wang Lin no longer paid attention to it. The sword came close and arrived before the ice tower. The eldest disciple knelt on the ground and said, with a clear voice, "Disciple greets master. I was lucky and managed to find the hiding place of those 4-sect alliance remnant." Wang Lin's expression was calm, but this heart suddenly skipped a beat. He did remember seeing in the core formation cultivator's memory that he had sent his eldest disciple out because a mortal reported that they had seen someone that didn't look like they were from Shuiyu. So the core formation cultivator sent out his eldest disciple to check up on this matter. This kind of thing wasn't uncommon in the past few years. No matter how powerful the remaining 4-sect alliance cultivators were, after years of being under this bizarre snow, they had all weakened greatly. Although this was the case, Shuiyu couldn't be careless. Normally, when this type of thing happened, it would be reported to the Divine Temple of Ice and Snow. They would then send someone to deal with it. The temple was extremely keen on this. If the report was given today, they would send someone out tomorrow. Wang Lin pondered for a bit, then calmly said, "Lead the way." The eldest disciple was startled. When this happens, his master normally never deals with it personally. However, he knew not to ask, so he only nodded and led the way. The other 2 disciples looked at each other and followed behind. After all, their master was going personally. If they didn't go, then there might be trouble in the future. So they forced themselves to follow Wang Lin. The 4 of them formed a 4-point beam of light and flew into the distance. After a short while, the eldest disciple stopped. He pointed at a snowy mountain and said, "Disciple used the flying eye sculpture and personally saw that a person disappeared here. I believe they have a hiding place here." Wang Lin's divine sense swept the area. Although his expression was calm, his eyes became focused. "The 3 of you wait here." After leaving that order, Wang Lin flew forward. His divine sense found that below the snowy mountain there was a restriction, and inside it were 2 souls. One of them was only at the core formation stage, but the other one was very strange. Sometimes it was core formation, sometimes it was nascent soul, and sometimes it was even soul formation. This phenomenon had only one explanation, and that was this person's nascent soul and cultivation was about to scatter, meaning it was extremely unstable. Wang Lin's body landed on top of the snowy mountain and sank into the mountain. He was closing in on the restriction. He soon arrived at the restriction. As long as it was a restriction, he wasn't afraid of it. It took only one look to see through this restriction structure. He sent out 2 restriction rings. The 2 restrictions soon started to fuse. Wang Lin stepped through the restriction and went inside. As soon as he entered, he saw a sword move and more than 10 sword chis attacked him. Wang Lin's gaze was calm. His right hand seemed to randomly point in the air and he whispered, "Life." The life and death domain suddenly gathered on Wang Lin's fingertip. This gentle point contained the way of the heavens and was filled with mysteries. A gasp came from the swords. They then started to circle around Wang Lin's finger. The swords were emitting a light as they underwent a change. Now the spiritual energy they released was several times more powerful than before. However, the divine sense was completely erased by the power of the domain. Wang Lin's eyes lit up as he looked at the terrified young man who was too scared to speak. Behind the young man sat an old man on an ice bed. This person's eyes were closed and his face changed between red and green. After a flick Wang Lin's finger, all of the swords suddenly fell to the ground with a ring. The young man regained his senses. His face was filled with grief and indignation. He clenched his fist and shouted, "You guys destroyed my home, and now you've chased us here. Do you guys have to kill us all? You will kill us today, but someday there will be someone who will destroy Shuiyu." This person's voice was filled with resentment that was now engraved in his bones. After looking at the young man, Wang Lin's gaze fell on the old man. The young man blocked Wang Lin's view. He watched Wang Lin for a bit, then, after pondering for a while, he suddenly knelt to the ground. He bit his lower lip hard until it bled and said, with a bitter smile, "Please don't kill my master, kill me instead. I am the Water Ink Sect's junior sect head. If you capture me and bring me back, you will definitely be rewarded. As long as you let my master go, then I'll willing to go with you. If you don't, you will only be able to get my corpse." Although Wang Lin's eyes were calm, his heart was slightly touched. He slowly looked at the young man and then at the old man. Then he slowly said, "Why do you want to exchange your life for your master's?" The young man was silent for a very long time before responding with a bitter smile. "Master could have left a long time ago if it wasn't for me dragging him down. It was all because he tried to save me." Huan quickly get up. "This person is not a Shueyu cultivator." The old man on the ice bed slowly opened his eyes. The young man was startled, but his eyes suddenly lit up and he became very excited. He ran to his master's side and said, "Master, you're awake." Wang Lin took a look at the old man. He clasped his hands and said, "Junior greets senior of the Water Ink Sect." The old man coughed a few times as the red and green colors on his face became even stronger. With Wang Lin's life and death domain, he could clearly see the heavy death aura around the old man. He was near his end. The old man raised his head. He looked at Wang Lin and slowly said, "Little friend, I'm too injured to greet you, so I hope you will forgive me." "What has little friend come here for?" Wang Lin let out a sigh and said, "Senior's hiding place has been found by the cultivators of Shueyu, so it is best you leave now." With that, he pondered a little and then took out a bottle of pills. He pushed the bottle toward the bed. "Senior's injury is too serious for this bottle of pills to cure, but it can at least ease the pain of losing your cultivation. This should allow Senior to leave this place. The world is big, so there might be other chances to recover your cultivation." The old man let out a faint smile. He didn't even look at the pill and said, "Little friend, I don't know what sect you are from, but if I wanted to leave, I could have left back then. Even now I can leave, even if it means speeding up the loss of my cultivation, but do you know why I haven't left?" Wang Lin pondered and then gently shook his head. "This is my home. I was born here, and when I die, it will be here too." Although the old man's voice was soft, there was a hard-to-describe aura within it. Wang Lin looked at the person and no longer spoke. He clasped his hands and turned around to leave. His original plan here was not to kill but to give a helping hand. After all, he had spent more than 30 years in the Four-Sect Alliance and personally saw the invasion of the Shueyu cultivators. Although it was outside his power to change anything, he would still help when he could. The moment Wang Lin turned around to leave, the old man looked at the bottle of pills and sighed. His right hand suddenly moved and took out a fan with only 2 feathers remaining. "Little friend, I gift this treasure to you for the pills you've given me." After Wang Lin caught the fan, his expression changed. He had a deep impression of this fan. It was used by that woman when she was surrounded by the Four-Sect Alliance's killing formation. He remembered that after she died, this fan was taken away by a late-stage soul formation cultivator. He turned around and carefully looked at the old man. This person was one of the late-stage soul formation cultivators that was in the killing formation. All of the glory of the past was now a distant memory. Wang Lin left with a complicated state of mind. The 3 disciples all didn't dare to speak, they only silently followed him. Soon after Wang Lin left, the 2 came out of the snowy mountain and looked at the direction Wang Lin disappeared to before leaving. At the border, the old man hit the formation to create an opening. He split half of the pills with the young man. He then looked lovingly at the young man and said, "Go. You have to rely on yourself in the future because Master can't protect you anymore." The young man's eyes were filled with sadness, but before he could say anything, the old man waved his sleeves and pushed the young man through. Then the protection formation returned to normal. The young man stared at his master from the other side. His eyes were red and his voice cracked as he shouted, "Master." The old man let out a laugh and swallowed all of the pills in the bottle. His spiritual energy rapidly climbed back to its peak, though it was just temporary. He waved his sleeves and his body moved. His target was the divine temple of snow and ice at the center of Shueyu. Even if he dies, he had to die in his home country. Even if he dies, he must die protecting his country. All of the glorious moments of the past had become distant memories. The one that falls in the fire must be that immortal phoenix. Even if it must burn its wings, it will still fly in the heavens. Closing one door is like loving a world. Memories of the past will now be forever distant. The sand in the wind no longer filled the space of dreams. The whimper of the powerful flute is now only an echo in the desolate land. Closing off one door is like cutting off one space and time. The glorious past only remains in the descent songs. Yesterday's song no longer resonate the same way. The whispering complaints can't find its matching music. Opening a window is like hugging a ray of sunlight. Today's dream became the future empire's hope. Even the ordinary you and me need to have exciting displays. Pursuit without regret to feel the might of the world. Opening a window is like welcoming a wave of spring wind. The burst of nothingness awaken what was once lost. The one that fell in the fire must be that immortal phoenix. Even if it must burn its wings, it will still fly in the heavens. The young man looked at his master's back as he left. A scene of the past entered his mind. He kowtowed to his master before clenching his fist and leaving. "I, Chen Huan, swear that I'll wipe out Shui Yu." Wang Lin returned to the ice tower with a complicated state of mind. Although he had obtained a powerful treasure, he didn't feel happy. He only felt a sense of melancholy. At this moment, Wang Lin suddenly gained another bit of insight of his life and death domain. What is life? What is death? This question echoed in Wang Lin's mind. The late-stage soul formation cultivator of the water ink sect used the last of his cultivation to fly up to the snow fairy statue at the divine temple of snow and ice. Like a moth flying toward a flame, he exploded on the statue, leaving behind a red mark that they couldn't get rid of. Along with him, several other soul formation cultivators were killed in this explosion. All the glory was now gone with the wind. In his death, he died at the right spot. His death awakened the 4-sect alliance cultivators that hadn't dared to show their faces. In the blink of an eye, another year passed. Throughout this year, Wang Lin kept thinking about the life and death domain, and he gradually gained more insight. His own being had undergone a transformation in this past year. Looking at a mountain as a mountain, looking at a river as a river. Over, Wang Lin noticed that sometimes a mountain isn't mountain and a river isn't a river. It was as if there was another layer of fog blocking his eyes. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. When he reached out, he couldn't touch it. This type of thing won't go away with time. He would need a sudden burst of insight to get past the fog. Autumn passed and spring came. 2 more years in this icy world passed. Wang Lin was able to make some progress regarding the creation of the ice sculpture puppets. These ice sculpture puppets relied on snow blood veins to maintain themselves. A puppet with 49 snow blood veins could achieve a core formation cultivator's power. To be as powerful as a nascent soul cultivator, one would need 81 snow blood veins, but with these ice sculptures, the more veins a puppet has, the harder it is to control. And if 2 veins touch, the ice sculpture will explode. Because of this, the difficulty increases exponentially with each additional snow blood vein. Thus, one can see how difficult putting 81 blood veins into an ice sculpture is. This is why there were so few nascent soul ice sculptures produced by Shui Yu. In addition to this, the snow blood veins come from the icy snow tactic. Wang Lin was amazed by this technique. This icy snow tactic emphasizes refining the heart. This technique uses ice as the bones and snow as the heart to form an ice and snow soul to reach the state of a clear heart. It can be described as very mysterious and unstable. This is why Shui Yu cultivators are all impulsive and have personalities that can change drastically on a dime. The goal was to follow their will and do as they pleased to refine their hearts to the point of being impenetrable to outside influences. The more Wang Lin studied this technique, the more clear he became about its true terror. This technique couldn't be considered a righteous path at all, it was definitely a side path. Wang Lin felt that this technique was very similar to the 6 Desire Devil Lord's cultivation method. Wang Lin wasn't willing to practice this technique. He merely imitated it by changing the snow blood veins to pure blood veins. He used blood to work with his life and death domain to gain the ability to control the carvings. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lin had already stayed in this small city for 3 years. Adding on the 1 year he had spent traveling, 4 years had passed. Only 1 year left until 10 years was up. He could feel that the time for him to reach the soul formation stage was coming. He didn't know if he would trigger divine retribution when he reaches the soul formation stage. However, as he got closer to it, he realized that when he reaches the soul formation stage, it will create a disturbance that will alert everyone. So on this day, Wang Lin walked out of the ice tower and left. Before he left, Shui Yu had sent out a decree for all core formation and above cultivators to gather at the temple to receive a Tao lecture. The reason was that one of the 13 cultivators that had gone to Suzuka had returned. He was the only person that had succeeded in reaching the soul transformation stage. As for whether only one of the 13 succeeded or if Suzuka had done something, it was not something for outsiders to know. Wang Lin silently left without anyone knowing. Even the core formation cultivator that Wang Lin had trapped had lost his memory and regained his original position. At the border of Shuiyu, Wang Lin turned around and carefully looked at the land. Scenes of the past several decades passed through his mind as he let out a sigh and left. Wang Lin's goal was Zhao. He decided to reach the soul formation stage there. As for why Wang Lin was going to Zhao to break into the soul formation stage, one reason was that it was a remote location. The other reason was because he felt a longing for his home after talking to that late-stage soul formation cultivator from the Four-Sect Alliance. Everyone has a home. Does he have one? Zhao could be considered home, and there was a woman waiting for him on the other side of the Sea of Devils. That place could also be considered home, so he decided on Zhao to complete the cycle of being born there. Before he returned home, he went to the town to check on Da Nyo and saw that Da Nyo had opened up another ironworks shop. His wife was not young anymore, but she was clearly pregnant again. Wang Lin let out a smile as he looked at them. That new life was growing by the day. When he left a bit of spiritual energy inside Da Nyo's wife. That bit of spiritual energy could guarantee the mother's and daughter's safety. The new life was a girl. Da Nyo still didn't know that the Uncle Wang he had always wanted to see again had come to see him. Da Nyo's only regret at death was not that Xiao Nyo was not here to see him off, but that he never got to see the uncle the Wang who had watched him grow up again. That mysterious person who opened a shop, who he always pulled customers for, and who managed to sell a carving for 10 pieces of gold. He gave those 2 wood carvings to his daughter and they became family heirlooms. Wang Lin flew toward Zhao. 40 years ago, he walked the same road when he had just reached the nascent soul stage. Today he was going back through the same road, but this time he was about to reach the soul formation stage and was choosing a location to do so. The Wang Lin now and the Wang Lin then were as different as heaven and earth. He passed through one ancient transfer array after another. On this day, he was in a strange land where clouds filled the sky and rain began to fall. The rain began to fall harder and harder until it seemed like water was being poured down. Wang Lin looked at the sky. It had been a long time since he had seen rain this heavy. He couldn't help but think back to when he was in the same room with Zhong Hu back at the Hengyu sect. The rain poured while lightning and thunder fell from the sky. At this moment, rays of lightning flashed across the sky like silver snakes. They looked very beautiful. Wang Lin's body slowly landed on the ground. He didn't even use a technique to block the rain. Instead, he waved his hand at a nearby tree and the leaves on the tree gathered to form a leaf umbrella. Wang Lin walked in this foreign land with his umbrella. He was only 2 ancient transfer arrays away from reaching Zhao. In an area 40,000 kilometers to the east was where the ancient transfer array was located. The sound of rushing rain filled the forest and gave the whole area a certain charm, especially the old temple in the distance. This temple was clearly deserted. Its original red paint was now dim and some parts were even damaged, even the brass rings on the door had rusted. There are patches of green on the temple's side. Wang Lin had not seen many temples in his life. Looking at the temple, Wang Lin walked inside. This was an ancient temple. There were no statues of gods inside, only a half-petal praying pad. As he looked at the temple, he looked toward the door and then he returned to looking at the temple. Once he finished looking, he stood at the door and enjoyed the view of the rain. After a long time, shouts came from a distance. A few large men wearing rain cloaks came while yelling, "This damn weather. Once it starts raining, it never stops. There is a temple ahead, let's hide in there for a while. We can continue our travel once the rain lightens up." As they were talking, they saw Wang Lin inside the temple. They all paused and looked at each other before silently walking toward the temple. When they walked past Wang Lin, one of them took a step toward Wang Lin and seemed to have tried reaching toward him with his right hand for a gentle pat. However, another person from the group let out a grunt and pushed that person to stop him. That person turned his head and let out a snort before silently entering the temple. The 5 of them took off their rain cloaks, set up a fire, took out some food, and began to loudly chat with each other. However, every now and then, their gazes would turn to Wang Lin. Wang Lin gently shook his head. These 5 mortals had ruined the special mood of this night and wasted the atmosphere. He let out a sigh. Just as he raised his feet to leave, his gaze suddenly locked onto the forest in the distance. He saw a man with long hair wearing a thin robe taking big strides toward the temple. Although the man looked very slow, after taking one step, he was suddenly next to Wang Lin, walking into the temple. As he passed by Wang Lin, the man gasped and suddenly stopped. He carefully looked at Wang Lin, revealing his white teeth in a gentle smile, and said, I didn't expect to meet a fellow cultivator in such a small temple. My name is Moji. You are. Wang Lin's expression was calm, but he was very alert. This person was very strange. There wasn't a sliver of spiritual energy in him and he looked like a mortal at first glance, but how could a mortal see through his cultivation? Wang Lin calmly clasped his hands and replied, I'm just someone from the mountains. No need for a name, just call me Da Nyo. The large fellow looked at Wang Lin with a curious gaze and laughed. Brother Da Nyo, why don't we sit down and talk in this rainy night? Wang Lin faintly smiled and nodded before sitting cross-legged on the ground. He waved his right hand and a gourd of wine appeared. He took a drink. After the four-sect alliance was destroyed, Wang Lin's stock of this fruit wine had decreased, so he drank it a lot less often now. That large fellow let out a laugh, sat down, and said, Brother Da Nyo's cultivation is really shocking. If I'm not seeing this wrong, you're close to obtaining your domain. Wang Lin's heart skipped a bit. He became even more cautious of this person, but on the outside, he just quietly chuckled and dodged the question. At this moment, one of the men next to the fire laughed loudly. What in the world are you two talking about? We can't understand a word of what you are talking about. Obtaining your domain? Are you two crazy? Moji faintly smiled and said, Sir, your use of the word crazy is excellent. If one isn't crazy, why would they try to understand something like the laws of the heavens? If one isn't crazy, why would they try to become an immortal? One must want something in order to obtain it. That is the truth. The man next to the fire frowned and scolded, he really is crazy. I didn't understand a word. Moji smiled and shook his head. He looked at Wang Lin and asked, Did Brother Da Nyo understand? Wang Lin let out a faint smile and said, Your words are too mysterious. I don't understand, but I think the word crazy is not good. Instead, the word eat is better. Moji's eyes lit up and he laughed. Good. Eat is a very good word. If us cultivators lost the urge to eat, then how could we go down the right path and complete the Tao of the heavens? Wang Lin took a drink and silently smiled. Moji looked at Wang Lin, then his eyes suddenly showed confusion and then were filled with void. Wang Lin's eyes met his and his heart skipped a beat. He then quietly moved his hand over his bag of holding. After a long time, the confusion in Moji's eyes slowly disappeared. Just now, where were we at? Wang Lin's brows furrowed as he stared at Moji. At this moment, one of the men next to the fire, the one who had been listening in on them, laughed. He really is crazy, the man said. Moji let out a sigh and smiled at Wang Lin. Forget it. Since I forgot, I forgot. My name is Moji. What is your name? Wang Lin's brow furrowed even harder. After a while, he shook his head and let out a faint smile as he said, Da Nyo. Moji nodded. He looked at the rain outside and said, The rainy night is beautiful in its mood and endlessness. The plants silently absorb the water and the scent of death on them quietly disappears. This is the beauty of the rain and the taste of life. Wang Lin turned his head to look outside the shrine. The sound of the falling rain slow came inside and the sound of thunder would occasionally light up the outside for an instant. The fire inside the shrine flickered in the night, causing the shadows in the shrine to flicker as well. It was as if this was the border of life and death. The flickering of light seemed to also contain some hints of the life and death domain. Light is death, darkness is death, the flickering light represents the exchange between life and death. Wang Lin whispered, What is life? This question had confused him for a long time. Moji withdrew his gaze. He pointed at the fire and faintly smiled. This fire is life. Wang Lin pondered as he looked at the flickering light and asked, Why? Moji faintly smiled as he looked at the fire and said, I don't know why it is life, but I have constantly heard mortals say live fire, so I think fire must be life crazy. This time, all of the men next to the fire looked at the two as if they were some strange creatures. This fire is life. Wang Lin felt like he had gained some clarity, but he still hadn't fully understood it. He remained silent for a moment and then asked, What is death? Just as Moji was about to speak, his eyes were filled with confusion and void again. After a long time, he regained his senses and looked around in a daze. What were we talking about before? Without waiting for Wang Lin to speak, one of the men around the fire said, He just asked you what death was. Moji looked at Wang Lin apologetically. He hesitated for a bit and said, I believe brother also knows what my name is. May I ask for your name? Just like before Wang Lin could respond, another man next to the fire responded, His name is Da Nyo. Moji's eyes became even more apologetic as he said, "Ever since I obtained my domain, my memory has been a mess. I hope Brother Da Nyo can forgive me." Wang Lin's expression remained the same, but his heart was shocked. He hesitated for a bit before asking, what domain did Brother Mo comprehend? Directly asking someone their domain was somewhat taboo, but Moji didn't seem to mind. The confusion in his eyes became even stronger and he said, "Forget domain, hey, you haven't said what death is yet. Continue what you were saying, it was getting interesting." One of the men next to the fire hurried Moji. The confusion in Moji's eyes became even stronger as he said, "What is death? Death is to die. If a person dies, then it is death, and if the heart dies, then it forgets, that is death." Wang Lin's heart shook. That sentence was like a gust that blew away a lot of the fog that had left him confused. Death was to die. If a person dies, it is death. If the heart dies, then it forgets. Moji's confused eyes were filled with wisdom as he looked around before pointing at a puddle outside with this right hand. He muttered, "The water falling in this puddle today is life. Tomorrow, when there is no water falling, then this puddle is death. Dead water is water without life and flow." Then his right hand casually pointed again and this time it was on the men next to the fire. The void in his eyes became even stronger and he said, "Today they can enjoy, be angry, be sad, or be happy. That is life. In the future, they won't be able to enjoy, be angry, be sad, or be happy, and that is death." His hand suddenly moved and pointed at a praying mat. He said, "This shrine was alive when the statue of the god was here. Now that it is without it, it is dead." Speaking of this, he stood up, pointed at the sky, and said, "These raindrops are born in the sky and die on the earth. What's in the middle is their life. I look at this rain not for the sky, earth, or the rain itself, but the raindrop's entire life, this cycle of life and death." Wang Lin was touched. He stood up and respectfully bowed toward Moji. Moji faintly smiled. He then took a step and left the shrine like a meteor. His faint voice came from the distance and said, "Brother Da Nyo, you either understand it or you don't, know your limits." Wang Lin stared at the rain. After a long time, he let out a smile. At this moment, the men around the fire were all confused. They felt like they understood a bit, but when they thought about it carefully, there seemed to be a layer of fog blocking their eyes. "Fellow brother, what did that person mean?" One of them couldn't help but ask. Everyone else's gazes turned toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin shook his head and said, "You guys won't understand." With that, he took a step and left the shrine. He walked in the rain and looked up. This raindrop was born in the sky. Then he looked at the ground. This raindrop dies on the earth. What's in between is the raindrop's entire life. This is life and death. Fire is life because it has life. This is what they mean by live fire. Death is to die. If a person dies, it is death. If the heart dies, then it forgets. Wang Lin was walking between the heavens and earth when he suddenly felt something in his heart. He managed to grasp a bit of the truth behind life and death. He originally needed 1 more year of cultivating his domain to reach the soul formation stage. However, his comprehension suddenly grew, and after a short while, he was already at the state to reach the soul formation stage. It could be said that at this moment, if Wang Lin wished to, he could immediately reach the soul formation stage. But this was obviously not the place to reach the soul formation stage. Wang Lin suppressed the urge to break through and flew even faster. "I believe Brother Mo's domain is heart's death, and this results in his memory loss. To forget everything, leaving only the Tao." Wang Lin took a deep breath. This Moji was a genius. The insight he had gained in the shrine on that rainy night allowed Wang Lin's mentality to finally reach the level of soul formation. At this moment, he was worthy of reaching the soul formation stage and had the domain of a soul formation cultivator. The soul formation stage is where the strength of cultivators begin to vary greatly. This is because once cultivators reach the soul formation stage, their focus of cultivation changes from their bodies to their minds. Their basis is their understanding of the heavens and their strength is how well they can control that power. The domain is the most important insight for cultivators above the soul formation stage. According to the difference in understanding of the heavens, the domains obtained are different too. In other words, there are countless domains out there, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a difference in strength between the domains. Although the domains are very close in strength when they reach their extremes, the starting points are very different and can definitely affect future cultivation. Therefore, at the soul formation stage, the strength of cultivators vary greatly. If one only obtains an ordinary domain, even though they are gods compared to nascent soul cultivators, they will be lagging behind among fellow soul formation cultivators. If Wang Lin really wanted to reach the soul formation stage quickly, he could have done it when he was able to carve the first statue of the White Cloud sect's soul formation cultivator. However, that domain was not something he had made himself. It was the same as following in someone else's footsteps. Even if he had reached the soul formation stage, he would find it very difficult to break through in the future, resulting in a very low chance of reaching the soul transformation stage. Since it was not a domain he had formed himself, it would be very difficult to even fully comprehend it, not to mention transcend it. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.